Hi, Amanda.
Morning, Bob. Morning, Amanda.
Good morning, Randy.
Hey, how you doing, Bob?
Doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
Doing okay, thank you.
Good, good.
I'll go back on mute. I just wanted to say hello.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Amanda.
Morning, Bob. Can you hear me now?
I can, Amanda. It's a little bit of an echo, though. You want to give that another try? Just to check.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's nice and clear, Amanda. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you. We're having connectivity issues this morning in the city, so I apologize.
Understand. All right, Tim Heyman and Chris Hall. Do we want to do a quick sound check? Can you hear me okay? VDOT team, Tim Heyman, Chris Hall, can you hear me okay? You guys give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, thank you, Chris. Chris, could you all do a quick sound check so we can be certain we hear you on our end?
Bob, can you hear me now?
We can, Chris, but there's a triple
How do I?
behind you. Can you try that again, Chris? Chris, can you
Yeah,
try?
we're muting our mic. Stand by. You got to mute it on Zoom.
Chris, it would be better for you to go ahead and mute until you can get that taken care of.
I didn't see a. All right.
And VDOT, you're able to share screen. If you could please take that down now, that would be helpful. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We'll be taking our attendance here and getting started as soon after 11:30 as we can as our quorum joins us. Appreciate everybody being here today.
Hey, Bob, we're just doing a check. Can you still got echo?
Yeah, there's a lot of echo there, VDOT. So probably want to stay on mute until that's taken care of. Okay, as our folks join in here. So I see we have George Homewood, Chair of our Planning Directors Committee. Welcome, George. Just wanted to do a quick sound check, George, since you'll be one of our presenters today.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you loud and clear, George. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for
And
being.
unlike most planners, I'm not participating in death by PowerPoint this morning, so it'll just be conversation.
I think everybody will appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Bob, can you hear us now? Quick
Yeah,
sound check.
Yeah, that sounds clear, Chris Hall. Thank you so much. Appreciate you working with.
Okay, thanks. We're ready.
Okay. Appreciate everybody's patience as we let more folks sign on. I think as everybody's aware, we hit spring break with our regular monthly meeting. So we do have some people away. But if you could, we'll have a couple deputies joining us. Welcome, Brian DePropio from Hampton. If everybody could please hang on, we'll try to get started just as soon as we can. We have a quorum, but I'm going to wait just a few more minutes to get us started here. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. This is Bob Crum from the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission and the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. First off, just a quick sound check on my end. I see Andrew Trivet up on the screen. Andrew, can you hear me okay? If I can get a thumbs up, good. All right, Scott Stevens, that coming through okay? Thank you so much. Before we get started, our chair and vice chair are taking a much deserved break this week for spring break. And they asked if I could be the facilitator of today's meeting. So unless there's any objections to that, and you won't hurt my feelings if you want to elect a temporary chair, but if there's no objections, I can just go ahead and sort of keep us moving along today. So if I see some head nodding, I think you could use one less roll call. Okay, thank you so much. So before we get started, I do have to, as an official meeting, read our electronic meeting notice. If everybody could bear with me, and I ask for your patience. So pursuant to the declared state of emergency in the Commonwealth of Virginia in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of our CAO committee members, staff, and the general public, today's CAO committee meeting is being held electronically via Zoom. These electronic meetings are required to complete essential business on behalf of our region. Per the requirements of the Code of Virginia, we posted a meeting notice, agenda, and supporting documentation on the PDC and TPO websites for public review. Electronic copies of today's meeting materials were provided to our committee members and other interested parties. Members of the public were also provided the login information for this electronic meeting so they may provide public comment at the appropriate time on today's agenda. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be available after the meeting on our PDC and TPO websites. Before we begin today's meeting, just like to review a few housekeeping rules as we conduct this electronic virtual meeting. First off, we ask, as we're all multitasking, that participants stay on mute with their phones and computers until it's their time to provide input. After speaking, please remember to go back on mute. Please identify yourself by name and your locality when speaking or providing a motion or a second. And then finally, just a reminder that all votes today must be made by roll call vote and recorded in the minutes per the guidelines for conducting public meetings. So thank you all very much for your patience as I walk through that. So what I'd like to do today is call today's CAO committee meeting to order. What I'd like to do is call for approval of the agenda, and I could do that via roll call, which would also, if we could do the approval of the agenda and the minutes together, that would save us one roll call vote. Just to review the agenda for today, we're going to start off after our public comment with a presentation by our Virginia Department of Transportation District Office. We have Chris Hall and Tim Heyman with us today. They're going to give us an update report on the Hampton Roads Regional Express Lanes Network. And I wanted to note that I've invited, and he's on with us as well from HR TAC, Kevin Page, the HR TAC Executive Director, is here today as well. So I think that's going to be an exciting update for everybody. From there, we're going to hear from George Homewood. George is the Planning Director for the City of Norfolk, and he currently serves as chair of the HRPDC Planning Director Committee. And George is going to share with you some information and thoughts, first on proposed modifications to the state building code, and also perhaps some discussion of opportunities as we move forward in the future for our planning directors to help give you regional advice on legislative items or regulatory issues, or even the sharing of best management practices. From there, I'm going to give you a brief update on what we know about the federal infrastructure package and some work that we're trying to do to best position the Hampton Roads region to take advantage of that federal infrastructure package as that plays out over the coming months. And then Mary thought it would be really good to give you the opportunity just to go around the table and see if there's any updates from localities on vaccinations or budget items. So those will be our agenda items for today. So with your okay, I would entertain a motion for approval of the agenda and approval of the March 3rd, 2021 CAO committee minutes.
Amanda Jarrett, so moved.
Amanda Jarrett's made a motion. Is there a second?
Randy Wheeler, second.
Randy Wheeler from Pocosin, second. The motion again is for approval of our today's agenda and approval of the minutes from our March 3, 2021 meeting. So I'll proceed with the roll call vote. Standing in for Mary Bunning, Deputy City Manager Brian DeProfio.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. From Virginia Beach, Patrick Dehaney. From Gloucester County, Brent Fedors. From the City of Norfolk, Chip Filer.
Aye.
From the City of Franklin, Amanda Jarrett.
Aye.
From Southampton County, Mike Johnson. From Isle of Wight County, Randy Keaton.
Aye.
From the City of Suffolk, Al Moore.
Aye.
Thanks, Al. From York County, Neil Morgan.
Aye.
From the City of Portsmouth, Lavoris Pace. And I believe that the swearing in of the new Portsmouth City Manager will be occurring this Friday, is my understanding. From the City of Chesapeake is Chris Price on with us. From Newport News, Cindy Rolfe.
Aye.
From Surrey County, Melissa Rollins.
Aye.
From Windsor, William Saunders.
Aye.
From Smithfield, Michael Stallings. James City County, Scott Stevens.
Aye.
Williamsburg, Andrew Trivett.
Aye.
And from Pocosin, Randy Wheeler.
Aye.
Thank you. So that motion passes. What I'd like to do is continue with the roll call of today's attendees and guests, if I may. Let's start with a resident from Portsmouth, Mark Godulda-Gutrowski. Thank you, sir. From VDOT, Chris, I think you have Tim Heyman and also Administrator Chris Hall.
Yep, we're here.
Okay, thank you. From ODU, I see Ron Carley.
Good morning.
Thank you, Dr. Carley. From the HRPDC staff, our staff planner, regional planner, John Harbin.
Good morning, all.
Thanks, John. Our Deputy Executive Director, Keith Kennedy.
Morning, everyone.
We have our HRTPO Deputy Executive Director, Pavithra.
Good morning.
Thanks, Pavithra. Our HR TAC Executive Director, Kevin Page.
Here, Bob.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin. I see Peter Stevenson online today.
Good morning.
Very good. George Homewood.
Good morning.
Thanks, George. From Senator Warner's office, Drew Lumpkin.
Good morning.
From Representative Loria's office, Caleb Smith.
I'm here. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. I'm sure there is someone I've missed. So if I've missed your name, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Martha McLeese with Virginia Beach Vision.
Thank you, Martha. Welcome. Anyone else? Okay,
Good morning, Bob. Todd Halsey with VDOT on the line as well.
Oh, thank you, Todd. I'm sorry about the overlook there. Anyone else? Excellent. If you've joined and I missed you or are having any technical problems, please feel free to go ahead and mention that in the chat. Okay, so let's move on now to public comment period. Would anybody like to address the CAO committee today with public comment? Going once, going twice. Okay, there being no public comment, let's go ahead and move on to our first agenda item. So again, really happy today to have VDOT staff present today. We think this is a timely presentation on the Hampton Roads Regional Express Lanes Network. And pleased to have Chris Hall and his team to provide everybody an update. And VDOT staff, you're authorized to go ahead and share screen. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you, please.
All right, Bob. Well, we're bringing up the presentation. Just want to thank you and the rest of your staff for allowing us the opportunity to come before the group here and give a brief update on where we are with the Express Lane Network delivery. As noted in the agenda packet there, you can see that, you know, we've been through a few important steps already with the region endorsing the HRELN concept.
Chris, Chris, I apologize for interrupting. I'm so sorry. Chris, the way everybody's viewing it, you have the next slide mode up and it makes the screen and your maps very small. Is there a way to be able to expand that to full screen so we don't see the next slide, because it makes it a little small for everybody to see?
Okay, we thought we had it up on presentation. Yeah. I mean, so you're looking at this. Is that better? Is that better, Bob?
Well, we'll go ahead and do your slideshow from beginning. Yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get around it. So just be aware, Chris, the map's showing up very small, so you might have to take a little bit of time to go through, okay?
Okay.
I think that happens if he's got a dual screen. He may have chosen the wrong screen.
I'm not sure what there. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and press forward. I will take some time to work through the map there. I apologize for the technical difficulty here, but I just, you know, I wanted to note a couple of things that have happened already. Maybe a reminder for some of you out there, but again, as I noted, you know, we have a regional endorsement of the HRELN concept. Kevin Page and his team and the rest of the HR TAC board and a lot of work been going on over the past year to develop a resourcing plan for the HRELN, obviously in conjunction with the tunnel project. And then, of course, we now have the HRELN also in the draft constrained long-range plan for the region as a committed project. So those are three key steps as we move towards delivery of this key project for the region, or series of projects, I should say. So I've just got a few charts here this afternoon to kind of walk through you all on where we are in terms of delivery of this project. We'll talk a little bit about the sequencing, delivering in 2 phases, a little bit of the overview of each segment. Again, some of this stuff you may have seen already, but just to get everybody on the same sheet of music, talk a little bit about a high-level schedule for each one of the segments, and then we also have some updated animation fly-through presentations that are, I think, helpful in better visualizing how the system is going to operate. So the express lane network is conceived to be delivered in two phases. We obviously have segment one, which we call segment one, which is currently the reversible network, which operates at the peak periods between AM and PM, both in the AM operating in the westbound direction and the PM operating in the eastbound direction. Phase one are those projects which we currently have under construction. So they include all of our segment two projects. This is the high-rise bridge project and the conversion of the high occupancy vehicle lane to a hot 2 lane in the Chesapeake area, and then of course the HRBT expansion project. So that's phase one to be delivered by the end of calendar year 2022. And then we have phase two, and phase two are the rest of the segments which will complete the entire network from essentially the Jefferson interchange on the peninsula, running all the way around on Interstate 64 to the Bowers Hill interchange in the Chesapeake area. So the other segments in phase two, which we are targeting to be complete in conjunction with the completion of the tunnel project in calendar year December of 2025, are segments 1, segments 4A and B up on the peninsula, and then segment 4C. And I'll go into each one of these in a little more detail, and hopefully we can overcome our slide issue here as we move through this presentation. So we understand the existing project. Just to make sure, this is our current configuration for the hot lanes, obviously operating in a one-directional mode based on what time of day it is. This shows the PM configuration where those lanes are operating, moving traffic away from the base in the eastbound direction. Next slide. This is the first of our phase one projects, again, under construction. Many of you are familiar with what's going on down there in Chesapeake with the construction of the high-rise bridge. We actually, from a construction standpoint, we divide these up into segment two up into two pieces. And hopefully you can see a little more clearly the inset chart there of segment two, which runs all the way from the 264 interchange, Norfolk, Virginia Beach area there, all the way around to Bowers Hill, and includes two different projects that we're working on right now. The first of those is the high-rise bridge construction, and that includes the new high-rise bridge, as well as the widening of 9 miles of roadway between the 464 interchange and the Bowers Hill interchange. One thing I'd also like to note about this project is we made some recent changes, took advantage of some items with the contractor. We're actually constructing our inside shoulder on that project to be a managed part-time lane in the future when we will need additional express lane capacity. So we have the ability to expand this reach of the network up to 4 lanes, 2 general purpose and 2 managed lanes in the future. One of those being a part-time managed lane in the future when we convert that shoulder. But under its current configuration, when it opens up in the end of calendar year 2022, it'll be 2 general purpose lanes in each direction and 1 managed lane. Again, this project is to be completed in December of 2022. Next, we have in phase one, currently under construction, we have what we call segment 2B. This is the second portion of that overall segment 2, which runs generally from the 464 interchange to the west to the 264 interchange. And this is the project, if you notice out there, you've looked through that area, you can see them drilling foundations and doing the preliminary work for the gantries that will be necessary to convert the current high occupancy vehicle lanes to hot 2 or high occupancy toll 2 lanes through that area. This is about 7.6 miles of roadway being converted. Right now, the fixed completion date for this project is end of September of 2022. And one of the things that we're working through right now is how we synchronize the completion of these two projects, both the high-rise bridge and this conversion project, with bringing the entire link of segment 2 online as a tolling segment. You can see the cross section down there. We'll have, again, essentially just converting that HOV lane to a hot lane, generally through that area, not counting auxiliary lanes and acceleration lanes. You'll have 3 general purpose lanes in each direction and 1 hot lane, separated by a bollard configuration. Okay, now I'll talk a little bit about phase 2. And phase 2 are the projects that we currently have under preliminary design. And these projects are all to be completed by the end of calendar year 2025, with the objective of having a fully completed network, continuous network from the Jefferson interchange on the peninsula all the way around to Bowers Hill. So we'll start with the modifications to segment 1 on the south side. And as I noted before, we currently have the reversible lanes in place. The segment 1 project currently under design will do 2 things. The first item will be to convert the inside shoulder of that portion of the network to a part-time managed shoulder lane. As you can see from the cross section there, the purpose here is when we have the reversible lanes running in one direction, we have a part-time managed shoulder lane running in the opposite direction. Again, this is to give us a bidirectional flow within the network and to have a continuous network from end to end. Also of note here, for example, when the reversible lanes are operating in the westbound direction, the managed shoulder lane will be operating in the eastbound direction. And then, of course, when the opposite case is true, the eastbound shoulder will be converted back to a shoulder. The second portion of segment 1 also will be some modifications to the 564 interchange, which will allow us a more continuous flow through the interchange and allow us to have a 2-lane entry into the HRBT project in and around the Grand B entrance ramp there in the Norfolk area. And we've got the actual animation will show that a little more clearly. Next slide. These are some of the major work items. This will be a design build contract. And again, some of the items we'll be looking at completing noise walls. There'll be 4 bridges that will actually be replacing and or rehabilitating. both the east and westbound bridges at Tidewater Drive and Chesapeake Boulevard. Again, as I said, the 9 miles of shoulder rehabilitation and strengthening to carry that traffic load. Some widening will be required at spot locations, as well as the tolling gantries and overhead signage required to operate the part-time managed lane shoulders. And then the schedule for this project, we will be going out for the request for qualifications, and for a design build contract, this is the first step where we'll go out basically to solicit qualified contractors, and then we will screen according to their qualifications, down select the smaller list, and then that will be the basis of the list that we will solicit for request for proposal later on. So we'll be going out for that request for qualifications September of this year. We'll be having our public hearing, our first public hearing, the FHWA requirement, in October of this year. And then, of course, we'll be moving forward with our request for proposal in early 2022, and start of construction August 2022, with the completion date of December of 2025. Next slide. Moving across the HRBT, which obviously that's a separate project. Again, on the Hampton side, this is where we first connect back into the project in and around the Settlers Landing area. Segment 4 actually runs all the way up the peninsula, and that's broken into essentially 2 sub-projects, the first of which is 4C. This project will be constructing 2 express lanes from again, the Settlers Landing area all the way up to the LaSalle interchange area. It's about a 2.5-mile roadway stretch. And that'll be, that roadway configuration then through that area will be 2 general purpose lanes and 2 managed lanes in each direction. This is the largest and most complex segment within the network construction process. We'll be actually replacing 2 of the eastbound bridges over the Hampton River there, one of which is fracture critical. And then, of course, widening or rehabilitating the remainder of the bridges through that reach to include the single westbound Hampton River Bridge. In addition, and like segment 1, we'll be constructing the tolling gantries and overhead signage necessary to operate the tolling network, and also constructing additional noise walls as required through this area. And then our high-level schedule, our request for qualifications is scheduled to go out this month. This is I would say, the critical path project for the entire network. Again, the most complex, requiring the most lead time. This also will be a design build project. Again, request for qualifications, April 2021. The public hearing in September of this year. Our request for proposals in November of this year, with a start of construction in the spring of next year, May of 2022, with a fixed completion date, again, end of calendar year 2025. The last of the portions of the network, this is the remainder of segment 4. We've combined these two sub-projects together, 4A and 4B, which extend the network further up the peninsula at the Jefferson interchange. Sub-project 4B, which will run generally from the LaSalle interchange up through the 664 interchange, and essentially end right where the HOV lanes start and end vicinity of the Mercury interchange. Now, this will be focused at reconfiguring the profile through that area to allow for a single managed lane in each direction and 2 general purpose lanes in each direction. As you note, this is the area right around the LaSalle interchange where we drop the second managed lane, and we will continue to carry a single managed lane all the way up to the Jefferson interchange. And then, of course, sub-project 4A will take us from 664, between 664 and the Mercury interchange, all the way up to Jefferson Avenue. And again, similar to the segment 2 conversion project, this will be converting the current HOV lanes to Hot 2 lanes in each direction between generally the Mercury interchange, or just to the east of the Mercury interchange, all the way up to the Jefferson interchange. Major work items for this area, again, as I already indicated, will be same types of items with tolling gantries, overhead signage required for the operation of the system, as well as some widening in specific areas. This is mainly in the area there between LaSalle and 664, as well as replacing the eastbound LaSalle Avenue bridge. This also will be a design build contract, design bid build, I'm sorry. Schedule. Public hearing scheduled for this fall, October 21, with our advertisement of May of 2023. Notice to proceed that fall of 2023. This is probably the least complex of the project, and therefore we phased this one in last in terms of the construction schedule. One question that Mayor Tuck asked was, making sure that we understand that the lag time between our first public hearing there in October and the actual advertisement and start of construction. This is really just a mark on the wall for us to get our FHWA approval so we can proceed with our PE phase on the project. I would just, for Newport News and the city of Hampton, we'll be following that up with probably at least one other public meeting, full public meeting between the October 21 timeframe and May of 23 to make sure that the public is informed on the latest changes and or modifications to the design. We just don't have that scheduled in yet. Okay, the next piece I wanted to show you all are a couple of videos, and hopefully these will come through okay. Really just designed to give you a better idea of certain portions of the network, how they're going to look. One thing that's key on these videos is they are based off the actual VISM models for the 2025 traffic volumes, peak volumes. So what you're actually seeing are the actual volumes that we've modeled for each one of these sections. So here we're traveling actually westbound on the,
This is east.
eastbound.
So this is 664 H, right?
Okay. 664 traveling towards HRBT. You can see we're in the single lane configuration there. We just passed through the 664 interchange. There's passing through the LaSalle interchange. Now you'll see the second entry generated here right after this, between the LaSalle interchange and the Rip Rap interchange. Right here we have the two-lane exit on the westbound side, and then of course you'll see here we have the two-lane single lane on the inside with a second entrance there. Now we're to the two-lane managed configuration and two general purpose lane configuration. This portion is all Ballard separated all the way through the HRBT, generally to the Granby area on the south side is where those separations actually end. So again, of note, this is what the peak period traffic looks like AM eastbound moving through the new configuration. Okay, next we're going to bring up PM westbound. This is between 264 and 564. So we're starting out on the east end of the 264 interchange on 64. We've got the express lane open section there. So these will be actually not Ballard separated, so you can see the reversible lanes on the inside and the open managed shoulder lane operating on the inside shoulder there. Traveling in the westbound direction, of course, the managed lane configuration is moving away from the base at this time of day. And again, we have that bidirectional capability now on the inside shoulder of the westbound direction. On the eastbound general purpose, that shoulder lane is not operating. It's just it converts back to a shoulder. This just shows what an open section will look like. Allow folks to enter into the managed shoulder lane there. Again, these are going to be double stripe separated. There won't be any physical separation here just because of the space. And this is what the typical section will look like, generally running between 264 and 564. Again, this is an example of what it will look like in the PM configuration peak period. All right, Tim, if you want to, we can either stop it there and go right to the next video. Will we're now still traveling in the westbound direction. But this just illustrates how the configuration looks like coming through the 564 interchange. So coming up on Little Creek, now we actually have a slip ramp. Bi-directional, we have a second managed shoulder generated on the outside GP lanes. These will both converge to generate that two managed lane configuration coming out of the 564 interchange. Then we actually open this section back up again to allow traffic from Granby to enter into the system. So the inside lane will remain separated, the outside portion will be open, and then of course it'll close back up again, and you'll have two separated managed lanes and two general purpose lanes in either direction. And that will carry you all the way through the HRBT project. And as you noted before, this will be the same configuration coming out of the tunnel, generally through the LaSalle interchange on the peninsula. All right, Tim, I think that's good. Stop that there. Just before I open it up for questions, a couple of things I just wanted to close with, and I know we went through these pretty quickly. This is obviously a very aggressive schedule. We've done our best and made it up with the opening of the HRBT in the end of calendar year 2025. Realizing that there are a number of these segments that are going to be coming on, have to be mated up generally at the same time at the end of calendar year 2025. That's going to present some challenges. So, I will just tell you all is, the leadership of the region is making sure that we really are going to need your support as we bring these things online. And I want to tell you that so far with the first several projects that we've been working on, large projects, I can't say enough about the outstanding collaboration and cooperation of our locality staffs. It really is pretty remarkable to look at all the things that we have going on right now, and just how well our staff from the VDOT team and the various locality teams, working through everything from day-to-day traffic shifts to design modifications and working these things back through your city leadership and processes, and making sure that all of these things are being delivered on time and to the expectation of our locality stakeholders. So all that is to say, outstanding support so far, and I just want to thank you for all of that. But as you can see, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. This total is right about 850 million, 900 million. There's a lot of work to be done between now and 2025. So really just appreciate your support, continued support of you and your staffs. As I noted, we have the public meetings for all of these segments generally scheduled for the fall of this year. We'll definitely be reaching out to all of you as you desire to come before your city councils. We've talked with the cities of Hampton, Newport News. I think we're working with the city of Norfolk as well, Chip. But certainly, we want to get in front of your councils, make sure that they understand what we're doing. Any suggestions you have on how we do that, some of the materials that might be better to provide them the information that they're looking for. Obviously, we're still in the preliminary design phase, but as we step through the next several months leading up to the first set of public hearings, public meetings, we're certainly open to any and all engagements that you think would be helpful to set us up for success for those critical points coming up here in the fall. So civic groups, again, your city councils, other forums that you think would be helpful, please let us know. We'd be glad to provide you an overview of what we're doing and tailor it to those specific areas as required. With that, I'll take any questions. That's all I had to present
Okay, Chris,
this afternoon.
Could I ask if you could go ahead and stop share on your end? That will allow everybody to get back up on the screen here. Thank
Sure.
you. Very good. Before I open it up for CAO committee questions, Kevin Page, our funding partner on this, any comments you want to make on behalf of HR TAC before we have discussion with the CAO committee?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bob. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, I want to make sure I double off muted myself here. Yeah, thanks everyone for having me on board today. Thanks, Bob, for the invite. And Chris did a great job running through the HRELN. One thing I want to mention is that Chris and his team are also completing $1 billion worth of projects currently under contract as the general manager for the general contractor for the HR TAC's first 200 lane miles of construction or reconstruction in the region. So Chris, you and your team have done a great job and continue to as we transition into the Hampton Roads Express Lanes network. Just to make sure all the CAOs are aware, the Hampton Roads Express Lanes network is a joint partnership between HR TAC and VDOT, which was established under the Master Tolling Agreement, which VDOT and HR TAC entered into here almost a year ago. In that relationship, when HRBT is complete, that's the time of what we call transition of toll day one, the entire Hampton Roads Express Lanes network, the 44-mile section, and Chris, I'm very confident that you and your team will have it all built. Our job is to fund it as well, will be in place. And the pride of this is that we are, again, for first in the region. I believe that when we are complete with this, it'll be the longest contiguous hot network in the state of Virginia, as Northern Virginia has quite a few miles of hot network. It's all broken up into different interstate subsegments. So I think it's something that we should all be very proud of, as well as the management and control of that network will be under HR TAC. We've already set and established our tolling policy. We've included public transit free in the hot lanes, so we are diversifying as you all know as well at HR TAC, because we did pick up the HRTIF program, the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Fund program, with funding the backbone services that, in the region for the 6 cities of HRT. So as we move into that relationship further with VDOT, our organization that HR TAC has already funded about $27 million for the phase 1 preliminary engineering that Chris talked about. Those agreements have been inked and are under contract, and that work is well underway. So we aren't letting up off the accelerator, both for HR TAC, the HRELN, our Hampton Roads Transportation Funded project, and also the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Fund project. So again, I believe that the entire staff on the phone here today, and IDA staff to HR TAC, and Bob, you and your work and VDOT's work, collectively, we're starting to raise the bar around the state, and people are starting to look at us as now best practices as to how regional bodies can come together and work collaboratively to make a success story that's shared and not one that's just held up in single-handed relationships. So, Bob, I'm happy to answer any questions. We do have a 6-year program that now is up to $6.1 billion of projects funded and underway. And we just raised the bar to $9.55 billion in our 2045 long-range transportation funding plan over at HR TAC as well, using HRTF funding monies and controlled monies of HR TAC. So, Bob, turn the floor back over to you. Thanks for an opportunity to bring everybody up to speed on where we are at HR TAC. And again, I want to thank all of the CAAs for your support and also the hard work you do to make sure that your mayors and chairs or those appointed to HR TAC from the counties are well up to tune and up to speed, because it certainly helps in the efficiency of the HR TAC meetings. And the CAOs have also worked to keep their team apprised and also give us good feedback. So thank you very much for that.
And thanks, Kevin. So why don't we pause, and I'd like to open up the floor to the CAO committee and ask if there's any questions or comments for either VDOT, Chris Hall and his team, or Kevin from HR TAC. Chris, I did receive one text asking the availability of today's PowerPoint and the related videos. Is that something that is on a website that we could send to the CAOs?
It's actually on your website under the TTAC meeting, Bob, and we can make it available. We're setting up an HRELN website. I don't have a date when that's going to go live, but I know it's imminent. So like within the next couple of weeks. But if anybody was looking for that, I'd be glad to provide it to them.
Yeah, if you want to push those links to me from Chris, I can get those out to the CAOs in one single email. So I can take care of that for you. Okay.
Got it.
Any questions or comments?
Bob, I had a question, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
I don't want to bog the meeting down, but I am curious because there's so many different funding sources that are going into these two projects, the HRPT project as well as the Hot Network project. And it's difficult for me to keep them straight. So I can only imagine what it's like for members of the public and other jurisdictions outside of Hampton Roads. So I just wondered if Kevin or you could talk briefly about the sources of funding from local government inside and outside of Hampton Roads.
Yeah, Kevin, that probably, since the HRTF is the lion's share of this funding, Kevin, why don't I ask you to address that?
Yeah, sure. So the Hampton Roads Transportation Fund is funded by 0.7% of the sales and use tax. And then there's an index on our fuels tax regionally that supports HR TAC. That's for the entire 14 jurisdictions or donors to the HRTF fund. The HRRTF fund is a combination of three revenue sources, one coming from the $20 million off the top of the statewide recordation tax, which is a burden that's been felt by all of the jurisdictions in Planning District 23 and all the way across the Commonwealth of Virginia, for that matter. And then there's also the TOT tax, transient occupancy tax, and the grantor's tax that has been assessed to only the 6 jurisdictions of Hampton Roads Transit. So those are the funding sources that go into the two funds. And then also HR TAC has tolling authority in 2 ways. The one most specifically dealing with the Hampton Roads Express Lanes Network is a tolling authority that was granted by an special act of legislature 2 sessions ago. Today's session closing will be the second session, so it was not this one, but the one before, that gave HR TAC the authority to toll the Hampton Roads Express Lanes Network from Jefferson around to Bowers Hill through HRBT. And in that, there was the Master Tolling Agreement, which is the MTA that you all are aware of, that had to be signed between HR TAC and VDOT. So of that, of those facilities, that we're speaking to, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, which is a $3.8 billion project, $345 billion is being supported by toll revenues through a toll revenue indenture, and that's a TIFIA loan that's being secured right now. Will close in July. The HR TAC has issued its own special revenue debt of $700 million. We're into PAYGO now of probably over $250 million of cash, and we're about to close on an additional $700 million. At the same time, we're doing the TIFIA toll loan. We're doing an HRTF-backed TIFIA loan to bring that total, the 345, up to $1.039 billion for HRBT. For HRELN, there's a combination of revenues that VDOT is supporting on the front end of this project. It's an advancement for those that are involved in the Coleman Bridge and other locations. It's the revolving toll fund account. Chesapeake received a grant or two on that as well out of the revolving toll fund account, which we will repay over time as part of our waterfall flow of funds. And we will also have toll revenue debt indenture through TIFIA. And I don't anticipate, but may have some additional HRTF PAYGO funds, which will become part of the source of that effort as well. So just in a quick roundabout off the cuff, those are the revenues that go into these types of projects and programs. Also supporting under the 200 lane miles we have under construction today through Chris and Jim Utterback being the project leads. Under those projects, they are funded, the first ones were funded by a special revenue debt indenture or a senior lien, and also a TIFIA loan, both of which are about $500 million apiece. So those are kind of in a round way, if you want to use fingers to start to add this up. We're almost $2 billion into debt financing. We're about to pick up another 1.039 billion probably in July, plus or minus.
Drew, I know that many of our CAOs, and we've had exchanged that some parts of Virginia are concerned about some of our mega projects and the fact that perhaps there's money from other portions of the state going to them. Important to realize that's just not the case. HRTAC and HRTF, using the HRBT project alone, the largest project in the history of Virginia, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong with my numbers, but over 90% of the cost of that project's being paid for by our local regional taxes. So I think that's just important for, because I know we all have colleagues in other parts of the state saying, whoa, is all the money going to Hampton roads? In fact, it's not. This is sort of a do-it-yourself job through HRTAC to fund this. So.
Right, you hit the nail on the head there, Bob. The point that I was trying to drive at is I have attended a couple meetings recently, and I'm one of those weird local government managers that watch other jurisdictions' public meetings when I can. And I have seen some of the budget debates occurring across the state, and I have heard elected officials and CAOs alike using pretty strong language about the fact that they feel like HRBT is the word they're using, has taken money out of their normal revenue streams to fund our project. And the point that I have made is that while some money is coming out of that recordation tax, as Kevin said, statewide, by far and away, the lion's share is being paid for by the residents of Hampton Roads. And so I just wanted to inquire if we, and I'm using we as the broad term, have we done any type of correspondence to the other jurisdictions across the state to try and explain the benefit of the HRBT project statewide, as well as how the majority of the funding is being captured locally?
You know, Drew, that's something, you know, we work closely with our state partners and our federal partners, but perhaps through our partnership with VML and VACO, that could be a one-pager we could distribute through them. So thank you. I'd be happy to work with Michelle and Dean on that. That's a great suggestion. Any other comments or questions from the CAOs?
Hey,
Okay.
Bob, I had a quick, this is Kevin, if you don't mind me injecting, and I'm a guest here, so and I'll yield the floor to you, but I had one more question for the CAOs.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, so no better than the CAOs to know where I'm going with this is that at HRTAC, we've made significant investments, and thank you, Andrew, for bringing that up, because that's been a real challenge, I think, and I will be towards the end of this month presenting to the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, you know, the one that was just created in Richmond. They too themselves wanted to hear more about HRTAC. And I've also in the 81 quarter, I've done quite a bit of that as well, just trying to get people in other regions to understand that although VDOT calls these VDOT projects, which they are, I mean, in many cases, VDOT is the general contractor for HRTAC. The HRBT project is a little different, where it's an actual contracted project that's owned, built, and constructed by VDOT because it was under the P3. And then we're a project funding partner, and we're the lion's share of that. Bob, you're correct. It's 92% of HR TAC control monies are going into that project. And of the $3.8 billion, only $200 million was smart scale. That's the only public money coming from outside of the HR TAC controlled monies. The recordation tax, which is something that is a little different, is all applied to the transit fund, which there are no transit fund monies going into any of the HRTF funded projects. So there's a little bullet of pushback that you all can provide to your colleagues across the Commonwealth. That was totally driven by the patrons, that $20 million take, so to speak, off the top of the recordation tax. But the point I want to make about that is that in the deal that I understand in the forensics of that is that $20 million was going to Northern Virginia. And what the delegation in Hampton Roads says was, well, if you're going to give Northern Virginia $20 million, we've got 1.7 million people that deserve likewise treatment. And it was that concentration of the population that drove the Hampton Roads region and the HRRTF to be that $20 million recipient. So just wanted to clarify that. The other point I want to ask of all of the CAOs here, and Chris Hall, you can help me as well if you're still with us, is that we've had a rather large rash of sound wall vandalism, a lot of tagging and spray painting and things of that nature. And, as you all know, in some cases, especially on the peninsula, HR TAC paid 100% of the cost of these projects, which VDOT is maintaining for us in the region at no cost to HR TAC, I may add. But maybe Chris or Bob or, you all might want to talk just a little bit about our challenges there, but maybe if the local jurisdictions might be able to help out on the other side of the sound wall to try to figure out where the access points are for these vandals, because, it's just a challenge. It seems to be happening on quite a few of our projects. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Chris Hall, I know you and I have had conversations about that item just this week. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Kevin summed it up. I mean, the region is spending a lot of money on infrastructure down here, and obviously with that comes, I think, just naturally, folks are paying a little more attention to what it looks like and should. But we have been experiencing, I would say, over the last couple of months, and I'm not sure whether it's the nice weather or coming out of, potentially coming out of the COVID pandemic, whatever the case may be, we've seen a rash of graffiti on a lot of our projects, and some of it's starting to affect the newer projects that we've recently opened. So anything that you all can do to help with that or message that within your jurisdictions would be helpful. We've dedicated some of our state forces to, do a first round to try and get all of it covered up that we've identified recently. But obviously, we've also seen instances where we cover it up and within a couple of weeks or even days, it's right back over the spot that we covered. So anything you can do to help would be much appreciated.
So any ideas from the CAOs on that item for VDOT or advice?
Security cameras.
Were you able to hear that?
Yeah, we obviously have the traffic cameras out, and that's one of the things that we're continuing to monitor. So, we will be adding that to the items within our traffic operations center that our folks are going to be looking out for.
Very good. Any other comments for Chris? All right, Chris, well, we're going to go ahead and move on. Thank you, Chris Hall. And again, if you want to help me with those links, I'll get that out to the CAO committee.
Hey, Bob, could I just take one more second? Well,
yes, sir.
Before you move on, I would just like to, first of all, I want to thank all the CAOs, again, their staff. There's been a lot of churn with some of our normal programs this year. I know we went through a fairly arduous drill with the changes to the revenue share program. Appreciate everybody's patience with that. You know, both Bob, you and I have talked about you know, the levels of funding with the FAST Act programs. Of course, that's our CMAQ and RSTP funds, which are managed through the TPO. Unfortunately, the growth factors were not included. They just reapproved that program at FY20 levels. So, you know, we're coming back to your programmers within each one of the localities to try and balance those two programs as well. So, you know, we're doing our best collectively between Bob's staff and our staff to make sure that we're preserving those projects that are on the front end of the program. So years 1, 2, and 3, of course, will get the highest priority for making sure that we can cover all of those requirements, not delay anything that's already in the pipeline. But again, I just wanted to note, you know, how much we do appreciate the patience you're exhibiting through all this, and you know, we want to get through the churn as quickly as possible. Hopefully, although I know hope is not a method, but hopefully we'll see, you know, some reconciliation on that front later on this year with those two programs. But that's all I had. I just wanted to mention that, Bob. Thank you.
All right, Chris. Thank you so much. I appreciate your talk today, Chris. All right, so let's move on to our next agenda item. I'd like to introduce to everybody George Homewood. George is the planning director for the city of Norfolk, and he also serves as the current chair of the HRPDC Planning Director Committee. So we thought it might be an opportunity to bring George in. He's promised me he's not going to do the planner approach of PowerPoints, so we're going to just get a verbal report from George, but give you an update on the Regional Planning Directors Committee and some of the things that they might be discussing. So George, great to have you here today.
Thanks, Bob. It's great to be here. I'll tell you something though, folks, after that presentation, I sure hope that the CAOs will not beat up their planners and planning directors over the use of acronyms and things like that. That was that was almost painful, the number of acronyms that were used in that presentation. Thanks for having me. I just want to, I'm going to take a few minutes and then hopefully respond to any questions that y'all may have. So let me first start with the Hampton Roads Planning Directors Committee and you know, where we are and what's going on with that. We started several years ago to try to bring that group back together again. You know, there's a great irony in the fact that the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, with planning as a major focus, the planning directors are actually one of the groups that had not really been getting together on a routine basis. And so we decided to change that. We've been now trying to find our way through what works as a group. And so we want to be a sounding board to each other as well as to y'all. And we know that collaboration and communication are the key to doing that. So we've just decided to move to a monthly meeting schedule that we will focus about 2/3 of our meetings on the communication collaboration amongst ourselves, and about 1/3 of the meetings in having presentations and working on topics that you all may bring to us that you would like to hear about. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in that, but the plan is to try to make sure that we are doing the one thing that most all the planning directors want, which is to be able to talk to one another about issues and problems. And, you know, I mean, it's group therapy in some ways, but it's also, you know, we always kiddingly say that the first art of planning is plagiarism. If somebody else has already invented that wheel, then we certainly don't need to do it in our individual localities. And I think that, you know, we recently had a discussion on the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act proposed amendments and provide some input that will eventually be going to the PDC to send on to Richmond as regional comments on the proposed changes. And I think that's an example of the kind of things that we can do as planning directors getting together, looking at things from our unique perspective. Now, I really need to make sure that I stop here and say, I don't think that there's a single planning department in Hampton Roads that's exactly like any other planning department. All of the planning departments are different, and some have responsibilities for environmental, others do not. Some have responsibilities for building codes, others do not. Some have responsibilities for zoning and plan review, and others do not. So there is a divergence across the region for what each planning department is responsible for, what the mission is, what the roles are within the local government. And there's no attempt to change that, but the planning directors, all being professional planners, coming together with their own particular interests, we believe can provide for a unique opportunity for you all, as well as the region, to look at things from that perspective. The main reason I was asked to come today is to talk a little bit about the building code update. My understanding is that something came and hit your agenda with very little notice, and without much in the way of background, and with some confusion as to what it was and what the expectations were that y'all would do about it. And frankly, you wanted to hear some from the planning directors on what they kind of thought. So I'm going to provide a little bit of background on that. I not only am the chair of the planning directors committee, I was one of the 3 people from Hampton Roads that served on the group, the resilience subwork group. The other 2 being Steve Shapiro from Hampton with the Catchmark from the PDC. So I'll bring both of those perspectives to you today. But in 2018, the governor issued an executive order that directed that resilience be evaluated and incorporated into the next update of the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code. Now, I'm not presuming that all of you are experts in the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code. So let me provide a little bit of background, and I apologize to you if some of what I say sounds like it's dripping with both irony and some angst, but there is some, you may understand a little bit as I get toward the end. So Virginia's Uniform Statewide Building Code is really neither uniform nor statewide, but because there are differences that are carved out for various regions. For example, we have wind load requirements in coastal Virginia, and they have snow load requirements in the western part of the state, and those sorts of things. But nonetheless, there is an effort in Virginia to have a statewide building code that is adopted at the state level and administered at the local level. And the updates occur on 3-year cycles. And they are based off of the ICC, International Code Commission, what we call the I codes, which the International Building Code, the International Existing Building Code, the International Residential Code, and then there's others, the International Electrical Code, and the International Plumbing Code, and those sorts of things. So collectively, we sort of refer to them as the I codes. And Virginia is always one cycle behind. So, for example, the current Uniform Statewide Building Code is based on the 2015 I codes. And the update cycle that the governor's executive order was related to dealt with the 2018 I codes that will become effective in Virginia later this year. So they'll be called the 2021 or there'll be the 2018 Virginia Code that becomes effective in 2021. Meanwhile, there's another set of I codes that will be released that will become the basis for the next update 3 years from now to the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code. So anyway, with that, the process in Virginia is a little on the, it's a little tilted towards the building industry. Throughout the I-code process, there's a lot of involvement of building officials and fire marshals and people who are very much involved in the life safety aspect of building codes. Once it comes to Virginia, the building industry has a substantial influence over what the outcome will be. And so the process that's used essentially is to take the proposed I-code and then do additions and subtractions that are unique to Virginia. For the most part, it's a lot of subtractions. And as I mentioned, the building industry controls the process to a great degree. And it is all based on cost, quite frankly. If something is in an I-code that costs a nickel, the building industry really wants it's out of there. And that's, good example is that for the last three cycles, the International Building Code has had a requirement for residential sprinkler systems in residential units. And in Virginia, that requirement has never made it into the Uniform Statewide Building Code. It's been taken out every single time because it's thought to be too costly. And the argument is we'll never have affordable housing if we have some of these requirements placed in. And I give you that as dripping with irony, and I acknowledge it. But that goes to some of the experience that we had with the resilience subwork group. The other thing I guess I really want to mention is that building codes are about life safety. Building codes are not about building strong buildings. The real goal of a building code is to allow human occupants of a building to escape from that building alive before that the building has a catastrophic end, whether it's through fire or earthquake or wind or what have you. The goal is not to build a building to withstand those phenomena. It's to build a building that will stand up long enough for the occupants to get out safely. There is an important distinction to that. So, as I mentioned, there were three of us that were on the resilience subwork group from Hampton Roads. It was a group that ended up having about 50 people on it. What our mission was to do two things. One, to review every single proposed change to the building code from a resilience perspective. Did it add resilience? Did it subtract resilience? Or was it had no impact? And then the second mission was to propose changes to the code that would increase resilience. And it was that last component, the proposed changes to the code to increase resilience, that eventually found its way onto y'all's agenda that created the question mark about how in the world did it get here and what was the process and so forth. I will tell you that we spent a lot of time, quite frankly, the Norfolk staff spent a lot of time developing a lot of proposals to put into the process, and all of them were rejected because they would actually add cost to the building. They would also add substantial resilience. Frankly, Norfolk is ahead of most of the rest of the Commonwealth and really ahead of most of the rest of the country in designing for and building for resilience because we've been thinking about it a little longer than many people have. So I understand that the first time out of the gate, perhaps there was a bit of reluctance to jump on board the bandwagon. However, the baseline was that anything that cost more was rejected. And I think that is, from a planner's perspective, that is something that we probably ought to find a way to advocate against going forward. That sometimes it's more important to do something correctly as opposed to do something cheaply. And that's, that's really where we were. I understand that the sub work group has been continued, and there will be another group. There will be another round of this. I don't have any idea whether I or Steve or Whitney will be asked to serve on that work group going forward, but certainly there will be representatives from Hampton Roads. So Bob, with that, I'd like to stop, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, George. So for the CAO committee members, any questions for George, either about the items he discussed with the building permits or the building codes, or even ideas for things that the planning directors might consider for discussion points to look at ways we could address things from a regional perspective. So I'll open it up to the CAO committee members.
Bob, this is Randy. I don't really have anything except to say thank you to George for his presentation. It was very informative and very helpful. And thank you for doing that today.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Anyone else, maybe related to anything George talked about, or maybe a planning zoning type issue you're dealing with at home that you might want to talk about? So let me pause a second just to make certain there's no comments or questions for George.
Well, Bob, apparently I put everyone to sleep, and that's just fine. I was remiss in not recognizing John Harbin, who is, along with Greg Gruttendorf, the staff liaisons from the HRPDC to the Planning Directors Committee. And they do a lot of the heavy lifting on the administrative side, and we're very happy, very grateful for that.
Absolutely, George. Thanks for pointing that out. George, I just want to thank you and all the planning directors. I know what local planning offices are like, and it's about what deadlines do you have this week and next, and plan reviews and all the planning you need to be doing at home. And for you to be able to give up the time to come and convene regionally is much appreciated. For the chief administrative officers, we wanted to make you aware this group is convening, and I think they can be an incredible resource for us as we deal with certain issues. So wanted to make you aware of that. So if there's no other questions, George, I just want to thank you, as always, for your professionalism and your participation. And we'll look to hear more as we move forward from the planning directors committee.
Thanks, Bob.
So let's move on very quickly. There's a couple more items I did want to discuss before we open it up for a roundtable. Wanted to talk with you a little bit about what we're beginning to learn about the federal infrastructure package. So I think all of us have been following the media, and you know that the Biden administration is proposing a rather sizable federal infrastructure package and program. I think the best way to describe it is, over the coming months, you're going to see this conversation in Washington, D.C. advance in two particular lanes. One is going to be the work that Congress is going to do to try to form, develop, and fund a federal infrastructure package that the president is calling for, that I think, based on our contacts in D.C., is going to play out over the next 3 to 4 months, is what we can expect in terms of both the House and the Senate really rolling up their sleeves and coming up with a proposal on a sizable federal infrastructure package. I think you've all seen the information. They're looking quite large. They're looking to try to demonstrate need for that type of a package. So that's something you're going to see our federal representatives working on over the coming months. In the shorter term, there's an appropriation process through the federal budgeting process. And through appropriations, fancy term for earmarks, it looks like over the next 4 to 6 weeks, or perhaps the next 4 to 8 weeks, both our congressional representatives and our Senate representatives are going to be looking at the possibility of funding small projects. And we're hearing by small in the $2 to $4 million range that they might be able to do through earmarks or appropriations. And that conversation is going to begin in earnest in mid-April. What we've done here at the PDC and TPO is we have been partnering with the Hampton Roads Alliance. We've been partnering with Reinvent Hampton Roads, the Port, the Virginia Maritime Association. And what we did is we've leaned on the plans and studies that you all have developed and approved through the PDC and the TPO. What we've been able to do is submit those plans and studies, the projects in them, to give our federal delegation an indication of what our need is here in Hampton Roads. What we try to position is that, number one, this is a region that are related to infrastructure has invested almost $5 billion of its own money over the past 5 years to frankly do, if I may speak honestly, the job that the federal government should have been doing. That, you know, this is a region that self-taxed itself to complete investments of over $5 billion in the interstate highway network. And our messaging has been that we think it's just fair that when the federal government develops their infrastructure program, that they consider some type of a credit, if you will, to those regions that have been proactive and done that, right? You heard Kevin Page talk from HR TAC. We don't have a whole lot of money left at HR TAC to use as a local match for federal transportation funding, but we think that we ought to get some credit for that money that's already been invested. The other thing we've been able to do is that we've been able to show our federal delegation what our board just endorsed last week is the next round of regional priority projects for transportation in Hampton Roads, starting with roads, tunnels, and bridges. This region has spoken very strongly about the need to finish the I-64 gap from Williamsburg to exit 205 in Richmond. That cost is about $550 million to do that 29-mile gap. That's been run out as a potential attractive project that the federal government may want to look at. For my peninsula CAOs on the peninsula that we've been working with on extending the Capitol Trail, we discussed the extension of the Capitol Trail being a project that would be advantageous to have federal funding. And if they can't fund the entire thing, let's help kickstart it and let's get it moving. On the peninsula, certain the Denby interchange, Cindy, we got funding for the first phase of Denby interchange, but future phases would be an attractive federal project. Moving over on the south side, Chip, you know, the 264-64 interchange, we have 3 phases of that remain to be funded that you've just identified as part of our fiscally constrained long-range plan. We think that could be attractive. Certainly, we think the continued widening of up 664 from Bowers Hill and moving up towards Monitor Merrimack, it's called out in our long-range transportation plan, that is also a very viable project, as is the widening of 264 down to the 2 Independence interchange. So we're fortunate that we have regional support for these projects through our long-range transportation plan and been able to illustrate those as potential projects that would be very attractive for a federal infrastructure package. But we've also been able to show them other types of infrastructure projects and needs that we have. Fiber and broadband. You know, we got $24 million fiber ring on the south side. Our preliminary estimates are for just over $100 million, we could build that out on the peninsula and move it west to a more rural communities. So we think that could be something that we want to see the federal infrastructure package consider. And the good news is that it appears that is something that this administration is very interested in. Sea level rise mitigation. I reached out to Virginia Beach and Hampton and Norfolk, and Chip, Mary, and Patrick all gave me their top level sea level rise mitigation projects. It would be tremendous opportunities for funding. So what we've been able to show is that We have great need here in Hampton Roads. We have needs across all infrastructure areas. And we're very hopeful that in the coming months that we're going to see some very, very positive movement at the federal level. And frankly, we're quite excited about where that might lead us. So I just wanted to let you all know that we have a consortium of regional organizations together. I pointed them to the PDC and TPO plans and projects since we have regional support there already, either in our legislative agenda or in our plans and studies. And I think that, our hope is that by showing that regional unity that we're going to be able to be competitive once this program comes into place. So Drew Lumpkin and Caleb Smith, I don't mean to put you all on the spot, that you and your staffs have been incredibly helpful of lining us up for conversations with key staff. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add from the federal level. And I think they may have moved on, but I'll just pause. We're going to give a briefing. Doug Smith and I are going to give a briefing at the PDC on this at our upcoming meeting next week. And I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. You're hearing about the infrastructure package. We're doing our best to stay on it. I want to thank Drew and Cindy. We got some word that they were looking for very small projects in that $2 to $3, $4 million range. They actually both gave me a segment of the cap trail they could build for $2 to $3 to $4 million. So if there is a opportunity to, bring that type of money to the region, we don't want to leave any dollar on the table. So thank you, Cindy and Drew, for your help on it. Drew, I know you've been working with your advocates as well. And anything to add to what I said?
No, I mean, the only thing that I would add is that, if you're not aware, earmarks are a thing again. And so if you're not paying attention to the earmark process, you should probably get plugged in. Members of Congress are able to submit requests. There are restrictions applied to that. In this year's process, it's been over 10 years since there was an earmark process available. And it seems like they're trying to apply some better rules to keep it from becoming sort of the free-for-all that it once was. But competition is going to be fierce because of limitations. So if you've not inquired with your representative on their process, you should do that. Everybody sort of is doing their own thing. There is an application for some sort of handed around. There's not a whole lot of money available, and there are only certain projects that are going to be considered competitors. So if you've not dipped your toe into that, it's probably a good time to do that. I think that for many representatives, the application period is over for this coming process, but it will open again in a not too distant future.
Good points. The other thing that I just want to stress is, so Chip, I'm looking at you on the screen, and Chip, you've got sea level rise mitigation projects in the $400 to $500 million range, right? And all of our other cities do as well. What we've been trying to stress is need, right? So the earmark park, as Drew identified, is going to be pretty small change, but this bigger infrastructure package hopefully is going to be significant. But I do want to say that, and Chip, I think you've had some conversations, this administration could look at infrastructure differently, right? Infrastructure they're going to look at in terms of programs as well. And they might not be looking at road widenings or Chip, like we think about RV4 projects, might not be, that's still going to be sorted out. Chip, anything you wanted to add on that? Because I know you've had some conversations.
Yeah, so just, I don't think we're calling them earmarks, right? We're calling them community project funding or something, right? I mean, we're not calling them earmarks, Andrew. It's community project funding. So we had a lot of conversations with our lobbyists at the federal level, and what we're getting back is we're a little disappointed because we thought the announcement that the Biden administration was going to give and the announcement the president gave would specifically mention flood mitigation in the different subcategories, and they didn't. But what we're hearing is that could be just because there's going to be a different bucket of money for that viewed as infrastructure. But yeah, all the indications we're getting from our lobbyists and from the folks we're talking to in DC is that flood mitigation will be viewed by this administration as infrastructure. And yeah, I have two projects that are enormous. One is close to $350 million, but it also protects well over a third of our city for the foreseeable future, which is huge. And so what we've been working on is trying to identify the various projects that have already been identified, what the funding source for those would be currently, and then if in a lot of those funding sources, there's a pretty sizable match by the locality. And so if you're talking about $350 million, I mean, even a 25% match is almost, unachievable on a project like that. So, we're trying to see if we can spit those to some, non-match funded bucket of money.
So Chip, thanks to your comments, you made me think of something that we've thrown out to a couple of federal representatives, and I wanted to mention this to the Peninsula CAOs. The community planning funds that Chip mentioned, not earmarks, the potential allocations through that process, appropriations process, are going to be small. But one of the things Chip's able to do for the bigger projects that you all can't do yet in the peninsula is he has this 3x3x3 Army Corps study done. And we need that on the peninsula. We need it in Virginia Beach too. I raised that because $1.5 million of federal money to fund your Army Corps study would be an interesting ask for, a small appropriation for you that can then set you, because if this federal infrastructure package is going to be big, it's going to last over several years. So you can get your study done and then be set up to compete. Now, Hampton has smaller projects. Chip, they're in the $20 to $25 million range, stormwater parks and more natural solutions. But when you do get up to some of those bigger projects, you're going to need that Army Corps study. So if you have conversations with your federal delegation and they're looking for a way to bring the peninsula, a small amount of money through appropriations, 1.5 million for that 3x3x3 Army Corps study may not be a bad ask for you. So I just plant that seed, and I know you've probably been thinking about that. Okay. Brian DeProfio, anything to add? I know Hampton, you all submitted some projects, and
yeah, I don't have much to add. We've been at this for a while, like Norfolk, and so we're continuing to move forward on the projects that we have. Like you said, they're not as large. Some of the initial ones are not as large in scope as what we talked about in Norfolk. But I think the recommendation that we try to get funding for the 3x3x3 study so we can get into it, that those additional funding streams is a good one. So thank you very much for that.
Very good. Well, I know it's 10 after 1. I want to be sensitive to your time. Mary thought it might be good to just give you all a chance if there's anything you all wanted to share on vaccinations and clinics, or budget preparation, information or questions. She thought just giving everybody a chance to talk about that. Chip, I don't know if you saw my email, but we had a great experience just yesterday at your federal clinic at Military Circle. So
yeah, if I could put in a plug for that. So because I'm not sure the word is really out that's not ours, right? I mean, that's everybody and anybody. I mean, that's not a Norfolk thing. The Macy's where we were doing our initial Norfolk mass vaccines has been converted over and turned over to FEMA, and FEMA is now doing it daily with capacity for 3,000 vaccines a day, 7 days a week. So they're going to do 21,000 vaccines a week. The disappointing part is that we're only seeing throughput of right around 1,000. So we're leaving about 2/3 of the doses unused every day. So whatever channels you all have, and if people are willing to drive, we've now extended it and opened it up that if you show up at 2 o'clock and there's doses, then you just walk in and you get your vaccine, and so you don't even need to pre-register at this point, because I think FEMA is starting to get concerned that they're not going to be able to utilize everything that they have.
Chip, what kind of vaccine is it?
That's a good question, Neil. I believe they're using Pfizer.
Yesterday it was Pfizer, Chip.
Yeah, I believe they're using Pfizer, but we were told that it would be relative to supply. So that doesn't mean it will be a Pfizer clinic the whole time. It will go between, they are definitely not using J&J. The reason we're using Pfizer and Moderna there is we do have a pharmacy set up with the cold storage capabilities in the building. So they're not doing Johnson & Johnson there.
Anybody else want to share any information on how vaccines are going, either opportunities or challenges?
I guess I can share. We have a vaccine clinic on this Friday, the 9th, and Wednesday, the 14th. That'll be Moderna vaccines. And then we have another one scheduled for the Thursday, April 15th for Johnson & Johnson. And so, we're, trying to get people subscribed into those vaccine clinics currently. We do have some open slots.
My comment would be that some of the ones we're having at the York Senior Center that the health department is, running the registrations, the number of no-shows and sort of last minute scrambling around looking for people to vaccinate is growing. I think the indication that we need to open things up is pretty obvious. And one little area that at least I haven't heard that we made any progress on are homebound elderly. We haven't been able to figure out a way to deliver a shot, and we got some people pretty upset about that.
Al?
Yeah, Bob, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Here, of course, we've opened up a clinic, well, FEMA did, in our Hilton. And of course, we're not seeing the numbers that everyone else is talking about, but we're still seeing the same, I think we're experiencing the same element of not having or having additional vaccines available. But the homebound issue, what our staff or EMTs have done is we've teamed up with Meals on Wheels. And we've been able to reach out to some of the homebound by teaming up with them.
Yeah, on the bound for us, we had some success. We partnered up with Southside Senior Services, and they're helping provide some transportation. I don't know if Chris is on here. I think Chesapeake might be doing something with that same group as well, and they're helping to provide some transportation to get folks actually to one of the sites. And that's been pretty useful and successful, I think. But ultimately, at some point, I agree with Neil. I think the solution, obviously, at some point is going to be, finding folks and then and going to them. And with the Johnson & Johnson, obviously, that becomes much easier to do than with the other two. So.
Drew and Scott, any report from up on top of the peninsula?
We're both waiting to see who goes for the mute button first.
That's exactly right. Yeah, Drew, I would just, or Bob, I'd just say from my perspective, James City County, for whatever reason, if you believe the data that's on the state website, we've made a lot of progress with our residents and in between the clinics and I guess our military and the VA and others, and maybe I don't have all those numbers in there. I think we're struggling with some demand where we send out the list from VDH, we're having trouble filling it now. And so to Neil's point of opening it up or getting more people that are interested, we still have capacity and willingness, but we've got to have people that want to come. And I know there was some concern of how much we have to educate our public to get them here and encourage it. And so maybe it's a shifting of mode. Neil said it a couple months ago, and we were all pulling our hair out that he thought it might just float away to really, it wasn't an issue. The vaccine was so available, and it appears that maybe we're reaching that point, that maybe we're getting into where there's enough vaccine and enough distribution points that these mass clinics we've talked about aren't going to draw the thousands and thousands that were expected. So, but I think our clinic's been extremely successful. I don't know what the end date may or may not be, but getting people there is continuing to be a challenge and getting more so.
Anyone else have anything else on?
Well, just a note of humor for Drew and Scott. I just got a call while we were talking about this, telling me that y'all are looking for people to fill slots at the clinic today.
I think
that's a daily occurrence, Neil.
I think everybody's having that experience to some degree or another. You know, as Neil said, I think it was Neil, maybe it was Drew. We're getting these lists and we're working them hard. And we're finding that 75% of the people on those lists have either gotten a shot already somewhere else, and we're all working those lists. But the sooner we get to general vaccination and have some ability, like Chip was talking about, for people to show up without an appointment. I mean, for some of us, making an appointment is not a big deal, but for some people, that's a barrier. And when we can get to non-appointment walk-ins, I think we'll be ahead of the curve. And Neil's point about homebound, I know that our combined group of people are working on that homebound stuff. I think they're beginning to make a little bit of progress on the peninsula, or at least putting in place something with Meals on Wheels and others to begin to make progress. So our unified command folks are at least working on that.
All right. Well, anything else anybody wanted to share on either vaccinations or budget issues, information that you're dealing with?
Budget's out there. Had a work session yesterday evening on it. If our federal congressional staff people have been here, they might have been interested to hear that maybe not surprisingly, kind of getting the prospect of federal funds used against me in terms of budget recommendation. But you know, compared to a year ago, it's a walk in the park.
Yeah. Just Chip, did you want to go, or okay? I'll go. All right. We you know, our budget will release next week. Our budget's released on April 15th. You know, we don't plan to recommend a tax rate decrease. You know, there is you know, we've taken the position, you probably have already, you know, discussed this, but if you haven't, we need some additional guidance from Treasury in terms of how the you know, tax provision applies to local governments in terms of the prohibition of decreasing taxes. And once we get that clarity, we may take some action on tax rate. But you know, our primary focus in the budget is compensation. We're providing going to be providing a 3% general wage increase, and making some other adjustments in terms of compression and some market adjustments, and of course the minimum wage adjustment that's required by state. So, but that's pretty much what we're doing. The rest of the budget, I kind of jokingly call a do-over, because we did freeze a lot of stuff in FY21. And so those are the things that really, you know, we may end up doing in terms of net adds in FY22. But that's essentially where we are.
Chip, you have something?
Brian's a lot like mine. We're in the same boat. I'm having a lot of conversations with council about the difference between ongoing funds and one-time funds. And as most of you are too, I'm sure, because it's tough. I mean, they're politically in a tough spot, because the residents just hear about this money coming in and they don't fully understand that it doesn't really fix everything that we still face. So we still are projecting a $15 million deficit from where we would have been, say, pre-COVID. That's limiting really what we can do. I mean, I've asked my rec center folks and libraries, they've got to really reimagine what open means. There has to be a reimagination of open. I mean, it cannot be fully staffed up, everybody doing everything, you know, yoga classes every day type stuff. I mean, we really have to use this as an opportunity to reimagine what that means. And I don't know about the rest of you. I mean, for me, we have massive capital issues in our schools. And, you know, I just, in fact, as we were sitting here, a Pilot Online article popped up blasting me for holding schools accountable for providing a capital infrastructure investment plan. And I'm not giving them their money. And, you know, my point is, hell, they have more than I do right now. So, you know, they can go figure it out. But, you know, that's something that, you know, we'll all have to deal with, obviously, because this K through 12 is going to get a lot of money over these next couple rounds of federal stimulus. And, you know, we're trying to navigate that area between, you know, not telling them we're not giving them anything, but saying, hey, you got to go use all these buckets first before we, you know, start using anything else. And thanks to Sarah Gregory and the pilot, I'm the curmudgeon apparently that gets to tell them that.
Chip, I would note too, based on like Senator Warner's briefing that I sat in on, there's a lot of money coming through K through 12, but it's not distributed equally. You know, that I can't remember the exact numbers here. So these numbers just illustrate the point. Like Prince William County was thinking they were going to get $100 million and Loudoun was going to get $9 million. It has a lot to do with your free lunch populations and various other things. So the point of me bringing it up is, while there may be a lot of money, it will come. It's not going to come evenly. It's not going to be per student or whatever. So some communities may see a large, relatively large amount of federal money, and others might see barely anything, relatively speaking. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, as some people may be able to use that money to move a mountain, and other people may be able to water the molehill.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I know some of it came with strings attached. Like when we had our conversations with the school board, you know, they got maybe 30 million through previous program, but I think it had to be used for HVAC units or something like that only. And I mean, there's definitely, it's not fully fungible, that's for sure. But I didn't realize the discrepancies you were just mentioning, Randy. I didn't realize those were that far off. I know our district, and it's probably, as you mentioned, it's probably a Title I or free lunch thing. I think they're anticipating getting somewhere around 130 to 140 million in this next round.
Yeah, just to add a data point on that, my superintendent's expressing the concern that Randy said. I mean, we only have 1/4 of our students qualify for free or reduced lunch, and therefore, you know, we're a wealthy community, and you know, so we're getting like 4 million for schools, and that's, you know, helpful, but it's not anywhere close to what I'm hearing, even proportionally some places are getting. And the age of buildings and stuff like that's kind of a similar problem in a lot of places.
Well, if you guys submit to me a capital infrastructure improvement plan, I'll slide you a little.
Anything to add? All right, everybody. Well, I appreciate it. I know it's a tough week for a lot of people. We were a little lighter on attendance today as a number of people were away on spring break. But it's almost 1:30, and I know how tight your schedules are. So anything else for the good of the order? All right. Thanks for your patience today. Appreciate it as always. Take care.
Thank you.